Good morning. Wait. That's not right at all. Sorry. I just noticed I ticked off my microphone accidentally. Whoops. It's not morning. It is evening. It is late night, actually. And we are going to do a little bit of not quite content. I was thinking of doing content at first, and I realized I need a pretty simple piece of code for stepping through a location. For example, when you go upstairs would be the big use case here. Now, 90% of the time, it's just walk point A, point B in a straight line. But there are a few cases when I need a distance. I need to walk a path of some kind. And so in order to walk that path, it's easiest literally to just kind of put a couple waypoints down, and call it a day. In our case, waypoints is exactly the way we're going to go. We don't need anything like nav meshes or anything silly like that because we've already got a waypointing system kind of in place, but we just need the pass-through points, the one where you say, I want to walk from here to here and I want to spiral up this staircase. Well, the way we do that is we say, you go from here, you go up a little, and then you go up a little, and up a little, and up a little more, until you end up where you want to be. So, that's how we're going to deal with this. So you can already see the grid exists here. It is a pretty, obviously it's missing some parts. We haven't dealt with this spot here. We've got some easy walk out areas over here and here that the player can walk to, and you kind of go, well, why can they walk there? Why do they need to? Why don't we close them off? And I just haven't done it yet. That's literally my answer. Plus, I need better tools for putting down more grid points. So this is going to be one of those tools where we work on something and then we kind of say, okay, cool. This works. This does a good job. Let's handle it this way. So, inside, if we look at the grid again, you'll see that there's a point here at the bottom of the stairs. Now, I want to get them up these stairs. That's going to be the hard part. Getting somebody to actually take that step. And to curve with the stairs somewhat would honestly be nice. One way to do this would be that we could introduce Bezier curves to our system. I think that's honestly a more difficult solution than what we need. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a path and then just have them walk that path start to finish. I just realized the music is still running, but I muted it for you guys so you don't have to hear it. So let's start with looking at what a grid node is made up of. And then we'll kind of go from there. Once we know what a grid node is, we can say, oh, okay, well, here's an extension of a grid node that we can make use of, that we can kind of abuse to some degree. Bleh, words. Now, the only thing is that right now you'll notice that every grid node has 4 links, and that's kind of how we handle each position that you're going to walk up and down. We need to attach some extra information to these links, and I kind of wanted to do it in a simpler manner than a lot of stuff we've done so far. I wanted to try and keep this a very simple system. So what I think I'm going to do is the following. Instead of 4 grid nodes that make up each of these, what we're going to do is we're going to create our own little class inside of here. And we're going to have a serializable class that we're going to call a grid link. And grid links are pretty straightforward. Grid links are the next position. And also, well, I guess I'll call this next node. They have a next node. They have a Boolean that marks it as a pass-through node. And that's really all I think we need. And we're just going to replace, oh god, I hate to do this, but we're going to replace each of these nodes with a link. Oh boy. And we have to do some modifications to the class in order for it to play nice. That's fine. North link dot next node dot bat dot next node dot next node. Good. Yeah, nice and simple for now. So we're just adding information as step 1. Now that will break everything. I've got an editor script I know is going to need some modifications, so I'm going to hunt that one down next. wherever I put that. Here it is. Maybe. Editor, here it is. Grid placement. Cool. Interesting. Okay. Cannot implicitly convert type grid node to grid link. So we have a grid node. Oh, I see. It's looking for grid links. That's like especially what it's hunting for. So a node script, that's our grid node. And then the north link is a grid link if next node is not null. There we go. There we go. Oh boy, that's kind of messy, but honestly, that's kind of the easiest way to handle this. As much as I hate to say it. Next, ugh. And the last one, we put one there, one there, one there, and one there. Ooh. Okay. We just have to resolve each of these errors in hand because as we add more information, the compiler needs to know about it. So we need to just handle all of these. Cool. Okay, so that takes care of all of that. And that should clean up all these compiler errors. Ooh, except the ones that actually have to do with the navigation, I assume. Yeah. Boop, 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 and boop. I'm just kind of curious what some of these are asking for, and so... Oh, okay. I know what they're asking for. They're asking for that change. Okay, cool. So, we've taken care of all of this stuff. Hey, Executron. And Kotufan, hey, I didn't notice you guys here. I got a little focused. So today what we're doing is pass-throughs in the grid system. So when you take a step, and I say I want to have you make a right turn without stopping at the corner of the right-hand turn, I can walk you to one and then the next. Kind of straightforward. That's what I want to do here. Ooh, and I just realized, crap, position is going to be... I might need to rethink what I want to do today. Because I initially was like, oh yeah, this will be simple. And then I just realized the direction you're facing is going to matter. Because if I'm facing forwards and the staircase leads up and then points sideways, I'm going to want the player to follow that curve. I want them to look forwards pretty much at all times along whatever path they're following. And I'm also going to have to change their final direction. Oh boy. This just got a lot more complex in a very short period of time. If only because these nodes are kind of working this way. Crap. Okay, what if instead of trying to add more functionality to the grid system, maybe instead we could have a special pass-through script, essentially, that says when you arrive at a point, keep going. Like, don't just act like the player pressed the button again. Don't stop. Don't do anything weird. Just keep freaking moving. I think that might be the way I want to go. Which means all this work that I just did, we're just going to hold down Control-Z. Might seem like a terrible thing to do, but in light of what I've just kind of decided needs to get done, I honestly think this is the easier way to go about it. I'll probably prove myself wrong later. Don't care right now. Cool. So, compiler errors are taken care of. We're going to dive back into our project when Unity lets us. We're going to make a new C# script that is going to be what? This is going to be our grid pass-through. Actually, yeah, grid node pass-through. Yes, long name, no, don't care. And this is a pretty specific thing. Yeah, no getting into fights on staircases. Like, that's a no-no, because we know that the bad guys are going to clip through the walls and the staircases and all kinds of weird things, and we don't want to fight with that, ever, right? We should never have to deal with that. So we're just going to deal with it and get it out of the way right now by just saying, special script that does cool things. So we take our pass-through node, and what we're going to do, first off, we're going to have to find, oh, hey, it's the last one. Cool. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to shift it into place kind of as best as I can. I'm actually going to use zoom out so I get a little more sensitivity here. But yeah, that looks decent. Yeah, that looks like a decent halfway point. I'm going to probably pull it a little further up the stairs and a little along the side of the stairs so you don't accidentally walk through the banister while you're trying to do this. So we want 105 to attach to 106. And crud. Based on this arrow, the blue arrow is pointing north, right? So if we're looking at our coordinate system based on the gadget in the corner, if I get the light widgets out of the way, this thing here, trying to make sure I'm actually like mousing over it for you guys, north, east, south, and west, right? Because if we, or sorry, other way around, because if we say Z is north, yeah, north, east, south, west. Sweet. So east is going to be the direction you're going to go. Here is your west link. Nope, wrong way. Did that backwards. I did it really backwards. And then 106. 105 is your west link, not your east link. Get rid of that. And then we have this other erroneous south link here. Let's just get rid of that. I really need a better system for this. When the player's moving, are they moving from one node center to another node center, or from one node's edge to the other? Nodes don't have an area, so there's no difference between center and edge. It's technically point-to-point movement. There's no futzing with, with that difference. If we're talking about something like an area, then we have to start worrying about centers versus edges. Or if we're talking about navigational meshes, where each mesh is a triangle, yeah, then we have to worry about centers and edges and things. But in the meantime, no, that's not something we really care about. So, okay, what we're going to do, we have the node script. We're going to then immediately add onto it. Where is it? grid node pass through. Now right now the pass through doesn't do anything, but we do need a target for the pass through. So grid node, I'll just call it target. And this needs to be public, so it's accessible via Unity, of course. I am kind of tempted these days to start doing something, something like this, so that we can keep some level of object orientation, but also keep the serialization aspect. Because if we do it this way, it continues to show up in Unity, regardless. Right? It has the flag attached to it. It has this metadata. So it's going to get saved, but if we mark it as private, that stops us from accessing it quite as freely, and it keeps us from getting messy. For now, because the rest of the project is done in this public-facing style, I'm going to keep doing public-facing, but eventually that might change. And now we need another node. And I'm just going to bring this node up and then over. I have to fight with heights a little bit here, so I'm going to do what I can to kind of shove it around and get it in the right spot. Because we want you to walk up the stairs so that you face a certain direction. Ooh, that's another thing to think about. When we say you're passing through from one to the next, what we should say here is also, is there a new direction? So when you pass through, yeah, direction is just an enum. Wow. Although there were too many there we go. And this does not need a pass through. This actually more things are coming to mind, but for now more things are just kind of popping into my head as I work on this system and as I think about it, so that it's kind of this, oh, I should probably be considering this right about now. And it's not something that is kind of terribly clear when I started this system, but that's kind of why I'm working through it on stream instead of just doing this offline and kind of letting you guys see the end product. You can kind of see the thought that goes into a new concept like this, which is kind of cool. This should be a none. And our, what essentially is going to, I think, turn into, yeah, because that's a south link. So this is going to be a north link. There we go. All right, so that should allow us to walk up the stairs. Now, of course, we need to think about this from 2 points of view. One, we need to think about it from the point of view of the pass-through. The pass-through should actually have some more information here. We're going to call this a pass-through target, just so we can do some cool stuff with this. And I'm just going to move the information from the pass-through into the pass-through target. So we have a target direction. And I'm going to call this incoming direction. Or just an in and out direction. You know what? I don't need incoming and outgoing. That's a little too formal for my liking. And we have a pass-through target array. Of course, we have to mark this as system.serializable. Otherwise, Unity won't recognize it when we have the array full of objects. Something to keep in mind. So here's our targets. We will have 2 targets for this thing. I say 2 and I hold up 1 finger. I mean to do this. 2 targets. 1 target is going to be when you're standing at 105 and you decide, I want to go to 106, right? So we have one target is when you're going up the stairs. So actually, that end target, I need to not mess with things for a moment. When you're standing at 105 and you walk through 106 to 107, our end target is 107. The in direction here is going to be, let's see, from 105, the in direction is east, and the out direction is south. It's going to be a little weird, but we can handle this. And then when you get to 107 and you want to go back downstairs, we're going to go through 106 to 105. So the target's 105. We are going to be going north to get to 106. And it's going to deposit you going west. I know it's a little bizarre to have all this extra information here, but we need it to ensure that we turn the players the correct way and that we make sure that they follow the path to the end and have the correct facing when we do this. Because this will let us do crazy, weird angles if we do this right. And I really like that idea of being able to have some kind of like control over the bizarre angles that the player is walking through. I'm noticing that the line here is going through some of the stairs. It makes me worry a little bit about how it's going to look, but we need to actually finish it so we can see how it looks. So, grid nodes, cool. Now we have to talk to the player class, or sorry, not the player, the party class, because they're the ones moving around. They're the ones doing their routine here that we need to take care of. So you press move, and that's pretty simple to take care of. Sorry, heater turned on, makes crazy noises. Get targets, get living character. If you're in a traveling mode, and we press forwards, great. Do we have anything for when we end somewhere? That's my only question. I also can't help but notice that we have some common code floating around here. Here and here, there's some very, very common code. And I'm kind of tempted to remove it through a function. We'll leave it for now. I will resist the urge to start cleaning up code while I'm in the middle of adding a new feature, because even though this copied and pasted is really ugly, I need to be able to take care of everything else first. So you press the key, you start moving. Great. Where do we do that? Because it's been long enough that I actually don't quite remember where some of this code is. Okay, so it's... So we send an onNavigation event to the grid node first. So maybe I shouldn't have closed the grid node quite so quickly. Get next node, onNavigation. Here's our gizmo drawing. I don't really care about most of this. I'm looking for the thing that moves the freaking party. You know, the thing that sets the transform.position. There we go. Okay, so we have a start position, we have a walk time whenever we press this. And that's, okay, that's what causes us to do the walk from start to finish. So the one thing I notice right now, and is probably true in the game, is if I mash a movement button, I'm going to move really fast, because it's not waiting for the last step to complete. Yeah. You can actually speed up the walk a little bit by just mashing forwards. So instead of bop, 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 where it's kind of this controlled movement, you actually can like mash it and make it a little more smooth, which I kind of liked, honestly. But with something like pass-throughs, we need to keep in mind that as the pass-throughs do their business, they're gonna want to automatically pass the player on. And if you do something like move and take a corner real quick, you actually end up like drifting the party. I don't know how you would drift 4 people tightly packed next to each other, but we'd manage. So yeah, it just kind of looks funny. Because then you can do that. Right? It's like, I don't know. It doesn't feel natural. So maybe we should wait for them to reach position, the final position, before we call it done. Just maybe. Ooh, also, something else I didn't think of. What happens if you start walking and you rest mid-step? So they keep walking to the new position. A little weird, once again. Not the end of the world, but a little weird. So here we evaluate the interpolation from start position to end position. We then walk a certain distance, and the one thing I really want to keep in mind here that I want to handle every single time is we need to ensure that if we are in a mode where we can walk, that the... Whoops! I just realized I hit Windows D, which closes everything. You guys get to see my lovely background for a moment. There we go. I meant to hit Control S, and my fingers were just shifted over one. If you can walk, you shouldn't be able to walk unless the distance between your current point and your current position and your next point that you want to be standing at are right next to each other. Like, you're pretty much standing at your final destination. So, what we can do is we can say distance to destination, or to grid node if we want to be specific. And we just say that's the transform dot position minus, actually, grid node reference dot transform dot position minus that, and then we just want the length of this vector. That's really all there is to it. So we could actually vector3 dot distance between the player position and the grid node they're trying to travel to. Very simple. Then we say, by the way, if you happen to press a key and the distance to grid node is less than, and we're going to put a new variable in our player for this, just to make movement a little easier to handle. And we'll call this, let's see. We'll call this the walk complete distance. And that's a floating point. I realize I did not put the type there. Once again, I'm getting way too used to Python. Python's great. It's got a lot of cool stuff, but it also can generate bad habits for anyone who is used to coding in another language. And the distance to grid node is less than the walk complete distance. And we just need to copy this across to all of these if statements. So you can't turn, you can't walk, you can't do anything until your distances, until your distances are set, and until kind of don't like having so many of these. I feel like this entire thing you should be able to turn off all at once. Let's shift this out here. Walk complete distance. There we go. And just for some cleanliness purposes here, we're going to put regions in. And what regions do is regions tell C# or it tells the IDE specifically, that we have a chunk of code that we'd like to be able to not only collapse, but we'd like to label it somehow. And this is kind of outside of standard commenting procedures. You'll see me do this from time to time, mostly when I'm handling stuff like large chunks of code that is all very related. So in this case, we say, well, you know, process input. Now we can collapse the whole thing down. And if we want to look at the update method without thinking about processing input, this is a way to do it. I'm going to move this in here very quickly. Oh, this actually shouldn't be here. I just realized. Cool. And the rest of these look good. So this should stop us from being able to mash forwards and have it at least like walk very quickly, right? I should, of course it has to, there we go. Interesting. Oh, because my distance is 0. We didn't give it any fudge room, and so when I started pressing keys, it said, no, you're not within 0. Because 0 in floating point is really hard to land on. What we should say is, well, the walk complete distance. Let's start with 0.1 and kind of see how it goes. So you'll notice it's a lot more jumpy, right? As I mash the button, it's only responding. I like how I can turn back and forth very quickly, though. But the movement is not playing too nice, which is good. That's what I want. Let's get turning to also play nice, and then we'll call this a good step in the right direction. Let's see. Ooh. Excuse me. Ooh. I've had some really long nights lately. Definitely has been not one of the more sleep-filled couple weeks of my life. I took a nap and just passed out for hours. And I completely missed my alarm this morning. It was actually, I think I have not dressed and gotten ready for work in such a short period of time in a long time. It was one of those oh shit moments where you're just suddenly like, you're awake and you're like, oh, this is nice, I'm waking up, and then you realize, my alarm didn't go off. I'm either really early, and it's like about to go off, but the sun is way too high up. That's not right. It should not be this bright. Shit. It's fun. I got into work very quickly, though, after I was awake. And I see I have messages. Harry Quill, thank you for following. Also, nope. Okay, everything else is just credit card statements, not followers. I'm looking at this going, wow, I have so many emails. No, it's just weird other things going on in my life. Like, you know, paying debt. So, where were we? We were walking between locations. So, let's see here. When you first end at a location, I want to set a Boolean. I kind of want to set a Boolean so that I can know when I've sent off a single message and said, by the way, I just arrived. So I'm just going to keep a private Boolean here for walking purposes. And we're going to start it off as true. Because when you do start the game, you technically start arrived at your location. And what we're going to do is when you say move, anytime you say move, we are going to do a few things. First off, we're going to set the arrived to false. And then when you actually land at a location, if walk arrived is false, then we set it to true and we send an event so that the grid node that we're attached to knows to forward you through to the next one. Need to be able to withdraw money from a douchey banker and then beat them up. I don't know. That's a little too reminiscent of the hookers in GTA. Yeah, here's money. Give me my health back. Okay, cool. Give me my money back. Like, that's kind of a good thing for GTA. You can be a douche in GTA, and that kind of makes sense. Here, though, you're trying to be heroes. So douchey things, we'll keep that to a minimum. So we already know the distance to grid node here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, you're walking, great. After you take your step, we're going to recalculate the distances. Actually, no, we're not. We're just going to say if the distance to grid node is less than the walk complete distance, and actually, we're going to put this first. If walk arrived is false, cool. If this is the case, first off, walk arrived becomes true. Also, this grid node that we just stepped on, because we know there's a grid node reference that the party owns, we're going to send it a new message. And that message is going to be an on arrived message, right? I have on navigate. I have on attempt navigate. Actually, I should do on navigate complete. And the other thing to keep in mind whenever we send these is that we should mark the send message options with don't require a receiver. Otherwise, Unity complains every time we send a message and no one is there to catch it. So the grid node now gets this on navigation complete. The grid node itself is actually not going to care. What is going to care is the pass-through. And when we say on navigation complete, there's a couple things we want to do. One, we need to figure out where you're coming from. One, we need to figure out where, if anywhere, we should forward you on to. So let's see here. The party needs a couple things. It needs the information on how to change direction, and we also need to send it another movement. Trying to think of a good way to do this, because there are a lot of bad ways to do it, and I'd like to not do it one of those ways. Obviously, we don't want to press a key for a player, because if the input changes, if something else happens, sending input might not be the good way to do this. And I don't even think we can, actually. I think Unity is very much a one-way street when it comes to setting input. I think it is the one who sets inputs, and then everyone else just reads from input. And that looks like what's going on here. I don't see any way to set an input, and that's fine, honestly. That shouldn't be the way we do it, is faking player input. We should really be passing through a better way. So on navigation complete goes to the node pass through. A couple things need to happen. First off, we need the party instance because, well, there's a lot of information in here we'll be wanting. For example, let's see, for each pass through target in targets, we need to check if the target matches first off. So does the indirection match the indirection that the party is currently facing? So if the target.indirection is the same as the party, what is it, facing direction? Direction facing. If the two are not the same, I just skip it. We don't care. If we want to come into a pass-through at a bad angle, it's not our problem at all. We're not even going to deal with it. And if we don't have any pass-throughs, that's fine. The hard part is going to be here, where we say, well, here's our pass-through functionality. It needs to go somewhere here, which means that the party needs some way to accept some kind of input, to accept a move command without the player input being what tells it how to move. It's difficult to code while listening to someone else code. I also talk a shit ton. Sorry for my not language, but I talk a lot, so I'm probably pretty distracting. Plus my bearded good looks. Anyway. Okay, so when you press forwards, we have this like set of events that always has to go off. In this way, this is kind of what we want to handle, and this is what we want to put into our helper function. So what I'm going to do is, we're going to add a new helper function, and it's going to be a kind of silly one, but, okay, I don't want to call it move forwards. I'm going to call it move direction. And what move direction is going to do, we're going to kind of genericify, because that's totally a word. We're going to generalize. There's the word I was looking for. We're going to generalize the code that lived inside the movement, and we are going to handle that, that code here. So first off, we need to pass in a direction that we're going to be moving. Usually it is going to be direction facing. Not for the pass-through, though. The pass-through might pass you in a weird way. So, how does rotation work? I want to look at rotation real quick, just to make sure. Okay, we set a certain amount of rotation remaining. Got it. Okay, this will be interesting. So we say move direction, and we need to, man. I need to figure out how the heck I want to do this. Like, I came into this with some ideas, so it's not like I'm doing this completely from scratch, but there's definitely some stuff going on here that I hadn't considered when I first came into this problem. So I can set the next grid node I want to walk to, and I don't need a direction to do so. That's pretty frickin' easy. So what I'm going to do, we're going to say grid node, here's our target node, or I'll even call it next node. There we go. Now, this isn't really necessary anymore. So we're going to send an attempt navigation. If the node is not null, then we do all this cool stuff. We set our start position. We set the end position. We have some walk time going on. We check if everybody falls asleep. That's a little mean to have a pass-through that could make somebody pass out. But at the same time, I'm not one to tend to be terribly charitable in my game design, so I don't care right now. And just to shorten this function a little bit, we're going to say if it equals null, return. And what this will do for us is this lets us actually rip out a layer of indentation. And I love doing that when possible. if I can, I would have as much of my code sitting at the first, I'd say 3 levels of indentation possible. Like, that would be just great. Because that means that my logic is pretty simple and I don't have any crazy stuff going on. You'll notice how simple this code looks right here inside this function in comparison to how it looks when I highlight this section here. Because we have an if here, we have an if here. There's a lot of kind of logic pass through that you have to sit there and think about if you were to say debug something in here. So now we just say move direction, where the direction is equal to this. I like that. That is incredibly, incredibly simple. Now there is one more piece of information here I need to handle, and whether we consider this forwards or not. That's always kind of a scary thing, but we can, that shouldn't be too bad. Because here it's true. When you walk using input, it's obvious what forwards and backwards is. Otherwise, it's kind of not so obvious. And when things get unobvious, it gets a little difficult to kind of tell one part from the other. Did I not do this right? I did not quite do this right. There we go. So this should let my movement continue to work exactly as I want it to. Nice and easy. I can still walk, that's great. And it's still, I still walk the same way I did before too. And this will slow players down a little bit, but I don't think that's a terrible thing. Cool. So now is where the magic happens. When you get a on navigation complete, we are going to tell them move, we need to tell the party specifically, move a certain direction. I guess move to node. I like that name a lot better. I really like that name. So let's do that name. Yeah, 10 levels of indentation, it might be a sign of something terrible happening. Oh dear Lord, that Unreal code. Wow. That's an interesting thing. So once again, somebody wanted to point this out, and I kind of want to make a point of this as well. Look at all the indentation here. Look at how difficult it is to read when we talk about figuring out where one piece of code starts and where the next one ends. It's kind of hard to say, okay, S new, okay, and then we have an open caret and then a second open caret, and then we close them both, and there are brackets here, but the brackets generate their own indentation, and then we're using S new. I assume that's the engine's new call. There's just a lot going on here, and it's a little overkill, honestly. All the different bits and pieces. Now, also, this looks like it's auto-generated, given that it's all UI stuff, and that is definitely something that Unreal does very well, is auto-generating some of its ugliest code so that nobody has to write it, thank God. Still. We have the target, and we're always going to count ourselves as moving forwards when we walk through a pass-through. It's just kind of how it has to be. So let's try walking to this pass through and just kind of see what happens, because I'm kind of curious, honestly. So we walk up to the stairs. Takes a little effort. And I put it on backwards. I feel stupid. Let's take care of this real quick. I actually completely did this backwards. 106 should be the west link, not the east link. So that's my bad. Which means 106 needs to put 105 in the east link position. We'll see if that takes care of the worst of it. Also, if I wanted to make this a little more responsive, we could actually jump into the party's data and turn up this complete distance. Now, the crazy thing I'm noting here is that it's walking me up and then immediately back down the stairs. You can tell because two pieces of audio are beginning and ending immediately. So I'm doing something wrong. Let's see. So I'm telling a move to node of target. Grid node, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? Or not grid node, sorry. Party, are you doing what you're supposed to be doing? When I tell you move to a node, I use the next possible node. Great. We set the new grid node reference. We start navigation. We say forwards. Yeah, sure, that's forwards. Oh, it's because my grid node is backwards. Remember, I put these in backwards. So what this needs to be is actually that, let's see, from 105 to 106, you should be facing west. So we need to switch this. And we go from west to south. And here, you should be going from north to east. It's a little convoluted, but I've done worse. Not to say I'm proud of having done worse, but hey, great. So it did work. The one thing to note is that it kind of slid me up the stairs sideways, and you'll notice I'm not turning when I do that. I kind of slide up the stairs, but I don't turn with it. So we need to add that other piece of information here. So we need to say, oh, by the way, you should probably also turn, because we're going to be setting your new orientation. So move to node, great. Move to node isn't one public void rotate party. And how do we rotate the party? We do it in 90-degree increments. Okay. Interesting. We're gonna try it this way first, just using the degrees, but we'll see how it goes. Because this looks pretty simple in comparison to a lot of things we've done. So we need degrees and our out, or I'll say the new orientation. New direction. I'll just keep using the same terminology. So we say new degrees. We're going to add the number of degrees of rotation in our case right here. I'm not actually going to do any of these calculations, but we are instead going to just set this to the new direction and be done. And we're going to actually have to do a little more work when we rotate the party using this than when we use the other code. So we rotate you by 90 degrees, and the new direction is going to be this. That's actually not that bad. And I like that these are all condensing down to little one-line function calls. That's actually really pleasing for me. Interesting. There we go. Second one needs to be 2 lines. That's fine. It's only because we need to do this -1 check to make sure that it's not less than 0 so that we can rotate all the way around as we expect to. So look at how much simpler this process input just got. This entire region right here, that used to be a lot more code. So we get to do a little cleanup at the same time that we add functionality, and that is honestly amazing. So not only do we move to a new node, we also rotate the party. Now we might not rotate them at all. Might not. But in case we do, we need to figure out how we're going to rotate them. So if the in direction... Let's actually think about this for a moment. Yeah, if the in direction is not equal to the out direction, right? So if your direction you're facing changes, we need to handle this. So how do we handle this? We need to find the shortest point between a turn. Pretty much what it comes down to. Because directions, remember, directions are integers here. And we always have a choice. We can either, if I want to face left and I'm facing forwards, I can either turn left or I can turn right for a long time to finally get where I want to be. We obviously want to do the shorter of the two. So let's see here. I need to remember how I actually intend on doing this. But the left distance is going to be our, and I'm going to convert these to let's just write a little helper function inside here, shall we? Dog. Here. Barking a little bit. Don't want him to blow out anybody's headphones, though. Hopefully that did the trick. Problem is it's another dog setting him off, so it's really going to be difficult to keep him in check. Dang it. Come on. Distance. There we go. In direction minus out direction. There we go. Got to get that shift finger working for me. So what we're going to do is we're going to compare the left and right turning distances And we're going to say, okay, if you want to turn left, how far would that be? If you want to turn right, how far would that be? And we're going to do a little comparison here and store the smallest of the two in our final turn direction. So that for us is going to mean we have to do a couple absolute value checks between left distance and right distance. And then we just stash the extra away. Finally, we say, actually, I didn't think about this, but it should be more like this. If the left distance is less than the right distance, then it's going to be the left distance. Otherwise, it's going to be the right distance. And there's some weird formatting going on here because I put a colon there instead of a question mark. And then we're just going to return that turn direction times 90 degrees because you turn 90 at a time. So if there is a chance we need to move, we need to tell the party rotate, and we need to tell it, you need to turn target dot get rotation. And your new direction is going to be the out direction. Just saying. So this should also rotate us. Should being the opportune word to use in this case. So turning still works. Great. With 0.15, it feels a little more responsive as the party turn. Ah, look at that. That was pretty. Now you'll notice I can back down the stairs slightly. And I actually kind of don't mind that I walk up the stairs in 2 steps, but I also kind of like doing it in one swift movement. So I'm honestly not 100% sure whether this should be final, or if this should honestly be the way you go up and down stairs, is just in, 2 steps. So you understand, step up, you can look around a little, turn, step up again. Also, the fact that the pillars penetrate through the floor is not the best thing I've ever done. But then again, this isn't final by any means, so we'll keep kind of futzing with this as we go. Also, it looks like there are little bits of light coming through here, and I'm not a fan of that. Yeah, bits of light are managing to get through this wall. I wonder how. I wonder what part of this is actually allowing the light through. Well, I'll have to fight with that later. So, we've got the new feature in. Cool! If you guys have any questions, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, I think I'm going to hop off. Stream tomorrow may or may not be on. It really depends on how much babysitting I have to do of this server set. Because I'm doing live server code right now at work, that means that pretty much everything I do and all the changes I make have to be heavily observed to make sure that nothing goes wrong at any time. And then obviously there's the whole deployment process, which I have to make sure that that goes nice and smooth. Otherwise, at the wrong time, terrible things might happen. And I'd rather that not be the case and have people at work be mad at me. So, we'll see how that goes. I put it at kind of a 50-50 right now, whether or not I have a stream tomorrow morning. Hopefully, once I get all the server stuff cleared up, I can go back to a more regular schedule. Maybe if you guys like it more, too. I noticed that I have quite the audience tonight. And by quite the audience, I mean about as many people as I tend to have in the morning. If I tend to start getting more people here in the evening, though, I'm kind of tempted to switch to an evening schedule instead of a morning schedule. Although at this point, the coding tasks that need to get done, they're not winding down, but we're starting to see the most obvious stuff be complete, and we have to start thinking content. pretty much immediately. Otherwise, what we're going to do is we're going to find we have this neat sandbox to play with, and we're not going to have the code in place for content so that we can create a world and create a descriptive narrative for the player to experience. It'll just be this like weird kind of sandboxy, grindy RPG that won't be any fun or terribly interesting. And so we need to come up with a way to handle all that, which means getting Google to, or getting some Google spreadsheets put together with items and names and stats, getting new monsters and all of their stats put together in the 3D models for them, because remember, I'm purchasing pretty much all the art for this game. There's very little art that I've actually created. Actually, there is no art that I've created in this game right now, and that's fine. I love the fact that I haven't had to spend any time on art. I can do coding, I can do content, I can keep it at that. Yes, it's expensive, but you get to make a game, right? So we'll see how that goes. Other things that we'll be working on, mostly content stuff, honestly. We're getting to that point. I've got somewhere around here, I've got a little notebook with a bunch of ideas. I need to iron out those ideas into something that resembles kind of a movie script, or a script that has some kind of choose your own adventure kind of bits to it, so that you can kind of see how choices the players make influence the world. So that I need to work on, and I can't really do that online. That's going to be a difficult one to do online at bare minimum. It's like watching, an author write a book on Twitch. You'd probably see like a coffee cup, is what Pat Rothfuss was saying. You'd see the coffee cup, and you'd see every time that coffee cup disappears and comes back down, that's what you would watch on Twitch. And that doesn't seem terribly exciting. You'd hear the tick, tack, tick, tack, tick, tack, a heavy sigh, and then a bunch of backspacing, and then some more tick, tack, tick, tack, tick, tack, more sighing, more backspacing. Don't know if that'd be something you guys are interested in, especially since I'm sitting in the programming part of game dev right now. We'll see. One thing at a time. Definitely one thing at a time. So, ooh, that's how light's getting in. I didn't notice there was a gap there between those pillars. If I walk around here and look, I can actually see the gap right there. It's tiny, but it's visible. It's probably generating that stream of light I saw on the floor earlier. Just for kicks, I'm sticking around long enough that the world is going to get a little darker and the lamps will turn on. And I definitely like how things look with the lamps on. Works very well. The only thing I now can see is the fact that the lights from the underside are hitting the roof up here. You can see the lights here are actually from this light center is from this lamp here. So we need to be a little careful about how we position the lights to make sure that the brightness doesn't look too off. Otherwise, people will know that the jig is up and that we've been cheating with our lighting. If I talk, Twitch writes a book. Oh, Lord. Twitch Plays Tamagotchi is going on right now for anyone who hasn't heard about it. I think they've already managed to kill it once, I'm pretty sure. Mostly through overfeeding and not taking care of it. But Twitch writes a book would be hilarious. Also terrifying. If I talk about what I'm writing and the choices, it might be interesting. At least that's what I think. Yeah, that might be a good way to do it. Go through a process, say, here's what game story looks like for me. Maybe show off some of the game story that I've got in mind. Show how I go from idea to written form to implementation. That might be something that's actually worth time. All good ideas. I definitely will keep that in mind. Alright guys, we've been at this for over an hour. Thank you very much for joining me. If you haven't done it yet, I can only say thank you for joining me, and also, could you hit that follow button down there? That'd be great. I would definitely appreciate it. Plus, I can hear you guys and see your suggestions. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'd definitely be down for doing some kind of like writing with suggestions attached. I have an idea for how I want the game to look and feel when it comes to story. Not entirely sure if all my story points make sense. It'd be great to hear if maybe a couple of them are in weird places or don't look quite right. So yeah, thanks again for joining me. Hit that follow button before we depart, and otherwise, have a great evening. I almost said day. It's not morning. Have a great evening. I may or may not be online tomorrow. Keep an eye on the Twitter account. If there's no activity beforehand, I probably am busy sleeping, honestly. Or not sleeping. No, tomorrow's going to be server maintenance. Right. I can't sleep through that. Oh, Lord. That would be terrifying. I don't want to sleep through my server maintenance work. So yeah, I'll see what we can do about tomorrow. Otherwise, take care, guys. Have a good night.